Good evening. It's Sunday, February 28th, and on screen is a live view of Falcon 9 as it awaits its 8:37 p.m. Eastern Time launch from Pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center. My name is Andy Tran, and I'm a production supervisor here at SpaceX, joining you from our headquarters in Hawthorne, California. You're watching a live webcast of our 20th Starlink mission and our 6th mission of 2021. Starlink is a constellation of low Earth orbit satellites designed to provide low latency, high bandwidth broadband to the world, connecting communities that previously never had access to the internet. And at a time when more people are working from home and more students are participating in virtual learning, internet connectivity is more important than ever. A bit later in the webcast, we'll share a story of a rural school district in Virginia benefiting from Starlink's ability to deploy quickly and get its students engaged in remote learning. Today's mission also marks the second time that we'll be reusing our Falcon 9 first stage for an 8th time, and is actually the first time that this booster is flying from Pad 39A. This booster debuted back in 2018 on the Telstar 18 Vantage mission from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, and flew again for our last Iridium mission in January of 2019 from Vandenberg Air Force Station. From there, it supported several Starlink missions throughout 2019 and 2020 from Space Launch Complex 40. We'll be attempting to recover the booster again on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. There she is on screen. And that's stationed off the coast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean. If we are successful, it will mark the 75th recovery of an orbital class rocket. Our Falcon 9 vehicles were designed for 10 or more flights with minimal refurbishment in between each flight, and today's flight gets us one step closer to that goal. Two quick notes about today's mission. First, we will not have stage 1 views during this flight with the exception of a stage 1 landing view from our drone ship camera. However, we will be receiving telemetry throughout the mission, so we'll make sure to keep you updated on stage 1 events as they happen. The second is today's the last day you can make a donation to St. Jude's for a chance to ride on a Dragon mission around the Earth later on this year. If you're interested in being on that flight, head over to inspiration4.com for more information. We are currently T-minus 10 minutes from liftoff. All systems are green for an on-time liftoff at 8:37 p.m. Eastern. And with that, let's take a closer look at the rocket on your screen.
I'm Yomezo, a Dragon propulsion engineer here at SpaceX. You're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 on historic launch pad 39A, the same launch pad that first sent people to the moon in 1969. Falcon 9, named after the Star Wars Millennium Falcon, is a 2-stage rocket that stands 70 meters tall, which is greater than the wingspan of a 747 aircraft. The number 9 indicates the number of Merlin 1D engines on the first stage, which is the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle. The 9 Merlin engines on the first stage accelerate the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere to space. About 2.5 minutes into flight, the first stage separates from the rest of the rocket and begins making its way back down to Earth to land on our recovery vessel, Of Course I Still Love You, as Andy mentioned earlier. While Falcon 9 is named for the 9 engines on the first stage, there are actually 10 engines on the rocket. The Merlin vacuum engine, or MVAC, is what powers the second stage of Falcon 9 to its targeted orbit. The MVAC can generate about 220,500 pounds of thrust at full power and can be restarted multiple times to place different payloads into different orbits. Our satellites are all safely enclosed inside the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, which is that pointed cone at the very top of the rocket. This protects the payload from aerothermal loads, heating, and contamination during ascent. Once we reach the vacuum of space, we'll jettison the fairing as the second stage continues on its journey to orbit. Today will also be the first time that we're reusing one of our fairing halves for the 4th time. The other half will be flying for its 3rd time. Our recovery ships Go Searcher and Go Navigator will be attempting to recover the fairing halves. Both vehicles are currently stationed in the Atlantic Ocean and will pull the fairing halves from the water upon landing.
We are just under 8 minutes to lift off. Let's take a look at how we're progressing in the countdown. The chief engineer held a technical poll at T-minus 1 hour, and the launch director held a propellant load and launch go-no-go poll at the T-minus 38-minute mark. Falcon 9 has been loading propellants since the T-minus 35-minute mark. The vehicle is a bipropellant vehicle, which means it uses 2 types of propellant. For fuel, it uses a refined form of kerosene called Rocket Propellant 1, also known as RP1, and for its oxidizer, super chilled liquid oxygen, we also refer to that as LOX. Currently, RP1 is fully loaded on the second stage and nearly fully loaded on the first stage, and liquid oxygen is loading at the moment right now. We also load helium onto the vehicle, and that began before the webcast went live, and it will continue to top off until about a minute and a half before launch. As propellant is consumed throughout the mission, we use helium to maintain pressure in the tanks. Just a few seconds ago, engine chilling began. This is where we allow a small amount of super chilled liquid oxygen to flow into the Merlin engine's turbopumps prior to the full flow of LOX to avoid any thermal shocks to the system. In addition, checkouts of the second stage thrust vector control actuators are also underway. This is known as the engine wiggle test. We move the thrust chamber slightly to make sure that the guidance hardware is a go for flight. The exact same tests happened on the first stage, except those happened just seconds before ignition. The vehicle remains healthy. We are currently working no issues. The range is standing by to support, and the weather looks green as well. All systems continue to be go for a liftoff at 8:37 p.m. Eastern Time.
In the United States, more than 18 million people currently live in areas without access to high-speed internet, and some estimates actually show that number to be even higher. Internet connectivity is an absolute necessity to working from home, remote learning, and telemedicine. First responders are also increasingly in need of internet access when coordinating emergency activities in areas where traditional internet does not exist or where the infrastructure has been destroyed in the aftermath of wildfires or a natural disaster. Starlink was designed to help meet the growing needs for truly high-speed, low-latency broadband to underserved and unserved areas. One such area is the Wise County Public School District in rural Virginia. When COVID-19 forced schools to close and resort to remote education, it became evident to officials in the area that the Wise community did not have the connectivity it needed to support distance learning for its students. According to a survey conducted by the school district, 40% of teachers and families in the area have limited to no access to internet. In December, the Wise County Public School District announced its plan to provide some families in the area with free Starlink service to promote remote learning. In January, we deployed the Starlink units to the community, and over 40 homes are now connected with service. We are currently delivering beta service both domestically and internationally, and the team will continue to push towards near global coverage of the populated world in 2021. Starlink is available to a limited number of users at this time, but if you're interested in service, we recently started taking orders on a first-come, first-served basis. To reserve your spot in line, you can now put down a deposit that's fully refundable. Head over to starlink.com for more information.
We are currently 4 minutes and 15 seconds away from liftoff. Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. We're currently waiting for the transport erector, or the TE, to retract. That's the white painted structure right next to the vehicle. In just a few seconds, you might be able to, oh, there it is. The clamp arms have begun to open, and in a few seconds, they should be fully open. And then at around the T-minus 3 minute and 39 second mark, the strongback will begin to recline and retract away from the rocket slightly to its pre-launch position about 2 degrees away from the vehicle. It will finish retracting all the way at around the T-minus 3 minute and 4 second mark. And at the T-minus 0 second mark, the transport erector will retract further away, all the way to 45 degrees away from Falcon 9 as we lift off. The transporter has a couple of jobs. It provides liquids, gases, electrical connections to the second stage, as well as air conditioning to the payload fairing. You can start to see it retract there to its pre-launch position. The first and second stages are both nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. The first stage should finish propellant loading in just a few seconds, and the second stage will finish around the T-minus 2 minute mark.
Togo verification.
At the T-minus 60 second mark, Falcon 9 is in startup. This means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown.
Stage 1 lock, slow close out.
At the T-minus 2 second mark, we light the Merlin engines. We use T-TEB as our ignition fluid. When it mixes with oxygen, it burns a green colored flame. We then allow the fuel into the thrust chamber, and the engine comes to power for liftoff at T0. The Starlink payload continues to be healthy. The Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. Weather is also looking great, and the range is still remaining green for launch. just a few seconds, we should hear a call out for LOX loading complete, and that will wrap up the last of propellant loading for the vehicle. You can start to see or hear some hissing and see those white clouds starting to form around Falcon 9. That is normal for us at this stage. The white clouds are LOX venting from our transport erector lines.
Launch abort has started.
It does look like we have held the countdown. It was an abort call, so give us a few moments. We're going to check in with the team and listen on LaunchNet to see if we can get some more information to share.
LD on countdown. We have an abort at T-minus 1 minute and 24 seconds.
You just heard that we had an abort to the countdown around the T-minus 1 minute and 24-second mark. Prior to the countdown, everything was proceeding nominally. Now keep in mind that the purpose of the countdown is to help us catch any potential issues prior to flight. There are 1,000 ways launch can go wrong and only one way can go right. And given that, we are overly cautious on the ground, and if the team or vehicle sees anything that looks even slightly off, they'll stop the countdown. Overall, the vehicle and payload are healthy and remain in good health. The next launch opportunity is tomorrow, March 1st at 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Hopefully you'll join us again for our next attempt. Until then.